I walked into the family dinner hoping for a quiet evening, the kind where conversation stays gentle and predictable. I wanted nothing more than to sit at the table, share a meal, and leave without feeling like an outsider. But the moment I stepped inside, I sensed something different in the air. The laughter felt louder. The glances felt sharper. I took my seat with a small smile, trying my best to blend into the background. For years, I had learned how to occupy the smallest possible space in that house. My cousin stood at the center of the room, glowing with the confidence he carried everywhere. He had always been the chosen one, the one who received praise without effort and admiration without hesitation. When he raised his glass, everyone immediately fell silent, as if they instinctively understood that the spotlight belonged to him. He announced his engagement with pride in his voice, and the room erupted with applause. People clapped loudly, leaned forward to congratulate him, and showered him with warmth. I joined in politely, though my applause felt small and hollow. Then he looked at me. I knew that look. I had seen it so many times growing up. It was the look he used before making a joke at someone's expense, the look that invited the room to laugh with him. He spoke casually, but his words carried an unexpected cruelty. He said I did not deserve to attend his engagement party. He added that he preferred people who belonged there, people who mattered. The room burst into laughter again, louder than before, as if they had been waiting for the punchline. My face burned. I sat frozen, unable to understand how easily he had turned me into the evening's entertainment. I scanned the table for even one supportive face. My parents kept eating as if nothing had happened. My relatives exchanged amused glances. No one spoke up. Not one person questioned the insult. Their silence cut deeper than the words themselves. I felt something inside me shift. It was not rage. It was not shock. It was a quiet break, a small fracture that reached the deepest part of me. I realized in that moment that I had spent years hoping for a place among people who never truly saw me. I had offered help, support, time, and patience to a family that treated my presence like an inconvenience. And now, in front of everyone, my cousin had said out loud what many of them had implied in smaller ways for years. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I kept my expression calm, though my chest felt tight. The dinner continued as if nothing unusual had happened. Plates passed around me. Conversations resumed. Laughter floated across the table again. I sat through it quietly, waiting for the moment I could leave without attracting attention. When dessert was served, I stood up slowly and excused myself. I walked out of the house into the cold evening air, feeling the silence wrap around me like a long overdue truth. My steps were steady, but inside my heart felt heavier than it had in years. Something had shattered that night, and I knew it would change everything that came next. I drove home in complete silence, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. The road blurred past the windows, lit only by the scattered glow of street lamps. I could still hear the laughter from the dinner echoing in my mind, each burst replaying the moment my cousin decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. With each mile I covered, another memory surfaced. Memories I had tried to bury for years. Memories of every time I had stood by him without asking for anything in return. I remembered the day he lost his job and called me in a panic. I wrote him a recommendation letter within an hour, convincing a colleague to give him a chance he had not earned. I remembered the loan I handed him without hesitation, the one he promised to repay but never mentioned again. I remembered the nights he called me from bars, too drunk to find his way home. I had driven across town more times than I could count, guiding him into my car while he rambled about life being unfair. I never complained. I never held any of it against him. I thought that was what family meant. But as I drove through the dark streets, I realized I had been carrying the weight alone. I had given him loyalty. He had repaid me with humiliation. That truth settled inside me with a heaviness that felt strangely final. The quiet in the car grew deeper, and for the first time I let it wrap around me without fighting it. Silence, I understood, held its own kind of clarity. When I reached home, the house felt colder than usual. I placed my keys on the table and stood in the living room without turning on the lights. The darkness felt honest, free of expectations and forced smiles. I sat on the couch and allowed myself to feel the exhaustion I had been hiding for years. A quiet ache rose inside my chest, not from anger, but from disappointment, a disappointment so old it felt ancient. I tried to sleep, but my mind refused to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of my cousin's smirk returned. The sound of the family's laughter followed it, sharp and careless. I turned from side to side, searching for comfort that refused to come. The clock glowed in the darkness, showing 2 in the morning. I realized then that I needed something more than rest. I needed distance. I stood up, opened my laptop, and typed the words Hawaii last-minute flights into the browser. The list appeared instantly. I clicked on the first option without checking details. I selected one seat, one suitcase, one way. The decision felt natural, as if I had been moving toward it for years without realizing it. I closed the laptop, walked to my room, and packed a small bag. No plan, no explanation, no hesitation. Before sunrise, I stepped outside, locked the door, and carried my bag to the car. The morning air felt fresh in a way I had not felt in years. As I drove toward the airport, a calm settled over me. I was not running away. I was finally walking toward myself. The moment I stepped out of the airport in Hawaii, it felt as though I had crossed into a different world. Warm air wrapped around me with a softness that made my shoulders relax instantly. The scent of the ocean drifted through the breeze, carrying with it a promise I could not yet name. For the first time in a long time, I felt no tension in my jaw, no heaviness in my chest, no pressure to pretend I was fine. The island seemed to welcome me without asking anything in return. I checked into a small hotel near the shore, nothing extravagant, just a simple room with white walls and an open window that allowed the sound of waves to drift in throughout the day. I placed my bag on the floor, removed my shoes, and stood barefoot on the cool tiles. The silence felt different here. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of space, the kind that allows the heart to rest without fear of judgment. The next morning I woke before sunrise. I walked down to the beach, guided by the rhythmic sound of the tide. The sky was still tinted with shades of deep blue when I stepped into the water. It was cool at first, then warm as the sun slowly began to rise. I swam until my muscles loosened and my mind quieted. I floated on my back, looking up at the soft glow climbing across the horizon, and felt a weight lift from me, one I had been carrying for years without realizing it. My days grew into a gentle routine. I would swim at dawn, then walk barefoot along the shoreline, feeling the sand shift beneath my feet. I stopped at small fruit stands, buying fresh pineapple, mango, and coconut water. The flavors felt vibrant and alive, reminding me that simple things could be sources of joy. I sat in the shade of palm trees reading old books I had brought but never opened. Hours passed without any sense of urgency. Time moved differently on the island, as if it had chosen to slow down just for me. Nobody knew my name. Nobody expected anything from me. I was not the quiet relative, the dependable helper, or the one who absorbed insults in silence. Here, I was simply a person breathing freely for the first time in years. With each passing day, something heavy loosened inside my chest. The hurt from the dinner back home felt distant, like a memory slowly dissolving under the warmth of the sun. I stopped checking my phone completely. At first it was intentional, then it became natural. I put it in a drawer and forgot about it for entire days. The quiet around me grew into a calm I had never known. I woke without dread. I walked without tension. I breathed without pain. Hawaii did not erase the past, but it softened it until it no longer controlled me. Little by little, I rediscovered myself. Not the version shaped by obligation and loyalty. Not the version defined by a family that never saw me clearly. I began to understand who I was when no one else was watching. On that island, healing did not feel dramatic. It felt simple. It felt steady. It felt like finally returning home to myself. One quiet afternoon, I lay stretched on the warm sand, watching the waves rise and fall in their slow and steady rhythm. The sun floated high above the ocean, casting soft reflections across the surface like scattered pieces of gold. My body felt light. My breathing matched the calm of the tide. For the first time in years, my mind held nothing heavy. I believed that the distance I had created would remain untouched for a while longer. I believed the world I left behind had settled without me. Then my phone vibrated. At first, it was a small tremor under the towel beside me, something I could have ignored without effort. But it came again, and again. Then it became constant, a steady hum that broke through the serenity I had fought so hard to build. I reached for the phone with hesitation, already sensing that whatever waited inside would pull me away from the peace I had begun to discover. When I turned on the screen, it lit up with an overwhelming storm of notifications. Missed calls filled the top of the display. Text messages piled one after another. Voicemails waited in long queues. Everything pulsed with the same red mark of urgency. Every name belonged to someone from home. My mother, my sister, my aunt. Even cousins who rarely acknowledged my presence had tried to reach me. I watched the screen for several seconds without opening anything. My heart beat a little faster, not with fear, but with a strange awareness that something had shifted far away from me. The island breeze continued to move softly around my shoulders. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. A seagull cried overhead. Life on the beach carried on without noticing the tension rising in my chest. I scrolled through the list slowly, not reading the content, only absorbing the sheer number of attempts. Dozens of alerts, all marked urgent, all sent within a short period of time. I sensed panic in the rhythm of the calls. I sensed disarray in the timing of the messages. I sensed something had happened that none of them knew how to handle. Still, I read nothing. I refused to let the chaos of the past bleed into the calm of the present. I had come here to breathe, to recover, to create a small space in the world where my heart did not need to anticipate the next wound. I had not healed completely, but I had finally slowed the bleeding. I was not ready to return to the noise that had once swallowed my voice. I pressed the button and turned the phone off again. The screen went dark, taking the urgency with it. I placed it back on the towel and lay down once more, letting my head sink into the warmth of the sand. The ocean continued its rhythm, indifferent to whatever storm waited on the other side of the world. I closed my eyes and allowed the peace to settle over me again. Whatever waited at home could wait one more day. That night, the calm of the island felt heavier than usual. The sky outside my window held a quiet darkness, the kind that seemed to press against the glass with a slow and steady weight. I tried to focus on the sound of the waves rolling against the shore, but my mind kept drifting back to the storm of notifications I had silenced earlier. Curiosity slowly carved its way through my resolve until it became impossible to ignore. I reached for my phone with a reluctance that made my hand tremble slightly. When I turned it on, the screen exploded with alerts. Messages stacked themselves in long lines that seemed endless. My mother had sent several voice messages, each one marked with a timestamp so close to the next that I could almost see her pacing, desperate for an answer. I hesitated before pressing the first one, then took a deep breath and listened. Her voice trembled with a fear I had never heard from her before. She called my name again and again, her words scattered by sobs that caught in her throat. I felt my chest tighten as the sound filled the room. My aunt had sent a string of short texts that barely formed complete thoughts. She wrote about a disaster at the engagement party, about people yelling, about confusion and shock. She wrote that everything had gone wrong in a way no one expected. Her words came in fragments, as if she could not find the strength to explain it all at once. I scrolled slowly, trying to piece together the narrative hidden inside her panic. My sister had sent fewer messages, but hers carried a different weight. Her sentences were long and frantic. She wanted to know where I was, why I had disappeared, why I had not answered anyone. I could sense the anxiety pushing through every letter. She tried to understand what had happened, tried to hold herself together while the family unraveled around her. I read her messages twice, then set the phone aside for a moment to breathe. I did not expect a message from my cousin's fiancé, yet her name appeared among the alerts. Her words were gentle, apologetic, almost hesitant. She wrote that she never imagined such cruelty would come from the man she planned to marry. She said she understood why I had walked away from the family dinner. She said she wished she had spoken up. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and disbelief that she had reached out when my own relatives could not. Then came a message from a family friend. It was short, almost blunt, but it carried the full weight of the chaos. Everything blew up. You need to know what happened. The simplicity of it struck me harder than anything else I had read. I sat on the edge of the bed with the phone in my hands, staring at the screen as the words sank into me. The ocean continued its steady rhythm outside, untouched by the turmoil unfolding thousands of miles away. I realized something massive had collapsed in my absence. A world I once carried on my shoulders had finally cracked without me standing beneath it. And for the first time, I understood the strange peace that distance could create. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over their crisis. I finally gathered the courage to call my sister. My fingers hesitated above the screen for a long moment before I pressed the button. I knew that whatever she was about to tell me would pull me back into the world I had tried so hard to leave behind. When she answered, I could hear the strain in her voice, a tightness that told me something had unfolded in a way no one expected. I felt the calm of the island slip slightly as I braced myself for the truth. She told me the engagement party had turned into a scene none of them could have predicted. It began with a guest standing up during the celebration. The room quieted around him as he spoke with a seriousness that unsettled everyone. He started revealing things about my cousin that my family had never heard out loud. He exposed the lies my cousin had told for years. He listed debts that had never been repaid. He spoke of betrayals hidden behind that polished charm my family worshipped for so long. Each revelation hit the room like a stone dropped into deep water. Faces shifted from admiration to confusion. Confusion shifted into shock. My cousin tried to brush everything aside at first. He laughed nervously and insisted it was all exaggerated. But the guest continued speaking. More secrets spilled into the air. More truths cracked the perfect image my cousin had built. Tension rose with every sentence. My cousin's face changed from amusement to panic. He began scanning the room for support he could not find. Then he blamed me. My sister said he told everyone I was behind the whole thing. He said I had orchestrated the exposure because I was jealous, because I held resentment, because I wanted revenge. The panic in his voice turned wild as he tried to shift the attention off himself and onto me. Hearing that made my chest tighten with disbelief. I had been thousands of miles away, alone on a beach, trying to heal from the humiliation he had given me days earlier. I had done nothing but disappear. My aunt stepped forward then. My sister said, her voice cut through the chaos like a sudden wind. She told the entire room that I had left because he humiliated me in front of the family. She reminded them of the cruel words he had spoken during the dinner. She said I had gone without a word because I could no longer bear the weight of the family's silence. Her confession created a new shift in the room. Suddenly my cousin stood alone. His fiancée stared at him with a look none of them would forget. She walked out without saying a single word, lifting the bottom of her dress so it would not drag on the floor. One by one guests followed her. Conversations turned into whispers. Chairs scraped the ground. People avoided looking at him. The celebration collapsed into ruin. My sister said my absence was louder than any confrontation I could have given. I had not raised my voice. I had not exposed him. I had simply stepped away. And without me there, the truth had finally found enough space to rise. The messages continued to pour in the day after I spoke with my sister. My phone lit up so often that I stopped trying to silence it. I let it vibrate on the nightstand while I sat quietly by the window of my hotel room, watching the palm trees sway in the warm breeze. The same cousin who had mocked me at the dinner, the same man who had enjoyed my humiliation, now sent long paragraphs begging me to call him. Every message carried panic. Every line pleaded for a chance to explain. The tone of his words felt foreign, almost desperate. I read only the first few sentences before setting the phone aside. My mother sent her own series of messages. They came with a heaviness that made my heart ache. She pleaded for me to come home, insisting that the family had realized their mistake. She said everyone felt ashamed for staying silent while I was attacked. She said they needed me to return so the tension could ease. For years, she had relied on that silence, letting it protect the comfort of the group. Now she wanted noise. She wanted truth. She wanted the very thing she had ignored when it mattered most. My aunt sent a careful apology. Her words were filled with regret for not defending me sooner. She wrote that she had replayed the dinner again and again in her mind. She said she understood now that her silence had contributed to the way I was treated. Her messages were shorter than my mother's, but carried a deeper understanding. I felt no anger toward her. She had seen the truth later than she should have, but at least she had seen it. Even my uncle, a man who usually stayed on the edges of family conversations, sent a voice note. He said I had always been the most responsible one in the family. Hearing him say that felt strange, as if he had been carrying that realization privately for years without ever sharing it. I replayed the message once, then placed the phone back down on the nightstand. The cousin who had mocked me so casually now needed me more than anyone else. His words filled with panic, regret, and fear replaced his usual arrogance. He had lost the support he believed he controlled. Without his fiancée, without the admiration of the guests, without the illusion of perfection, he had nothing left to shield him. His world had collapsed overnight, and now he looked for the one person he had always taken for granted. I left the hotel room and walked toward the shore. The sun was descending, painting the sky with shades of orange, rose, and gold. I walked along the coastline slowly, letting the fading light wrap around me. The sound of the waves rolled in steady breaths, each one softer than the last. I felt a calm I could not explain. I felt distance, not only from home, but from the version of myself who had spent years trying to hold everything together. As I walked, I realized how quickly respect can shift when truth rises. People see what they want to see until something forces them to look again. The family who once treated me like an afterthought now looked to me for stability. The cousin who dismissed me became the one asking for understanding. The balance had changed, not because I fought for it, but because I finally stepped away. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me. The world felt wider. My heart felt lighter. For the first time, I understood that sometimes power does not come from standing tall. Sometimes it comes from simply walking away. On my last day in Hawaii, I woke before the sun had even touched the edge of the ocean. The air felt cool against my skin as I walked toward the cliff that had become my quiet place during the trip. The sky stretched above me in a deep shade of blue that slowly softened as light began to rise from behind the horizon. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, listening to the steady breath of the waves below. Nothing around me hurried. Nothing demanded my attention. The island moved at its own rhythm, and for once I matched it without effort. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I reached the edge of the cliff. The vibration was constant, like a reminder of a world that refused to let go. I ignored it and focused on the slow bloom of colors that spread across the sky. Gold brushed against the clouds. Pink softened the tips of the waves. The sun emerged with a calm authority that made everything around me glow. I let the light touch my face and felt a warmth settle inside me, a warmth that felt different from anything I had known before. Standing there, I felt a realization rise through me with the same quiet certainty as the sunrise. Distance does not punish. Distance reveals. It shows you who people are when you are no longer available to carry the weight for them. My cousin had revealed his nature long before I left, but I had refused to see it clearly. My family had revealed their silence, a silence that held more meaning than any words they could have spoken. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I revealed my own strength when I stepped away instead of swallowing another insult. I stayed on the cliff long after the sun had taken its full place in the sky. The ocean glittered below me, each wave catching the light in a way that felt almost symbolic. Healing had not arrived with a dramatic moment. It had arrived slowly, piece by piece, as I allowed myself to breathe without the pressure of being the family peacemaker. I had carried years of unspoken hurt, and on that island, the weight lifted like sand slipping from an open hand. When it was time to leave, I walked back to the hotel with a quiet sense of acceptance. My suitcase waited by the door. My room felt smaller than when I arrived, but in a gentle way, as if it no longer needed to protect me. I checked out, carried my things to the car, and let the driver take me to the airport. Inside the terminal, my phone buzzed again. Messages waited from people hoping to pull me back into their crisis. I held the phone for a moment and then pressed the power button until the screen turned dark. This time it was not avoidance. It was a decision to honor a peace I had worked hard to find. When the plane rose into the sky and the island shrank below me, I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I did not know what waited at home, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was going back as someone I had finally learned to respect.